everyone, not yet, not the panel. My name is Jamie Sears. I'm not crashing. I'm supposed to be here. Thank you for giving us this opportunity. I have something to say. I'm Jamie Sears. I co-head social impact and philanthropy at UBS in the US. I'm really excited to be part of the summit and to be able to be part of presenting this really important conversation. And I just want to thank Zeev, Olivia, Mel, Zach, and the entire Landmark family for hosting us. I'm really privileged to be a part of an incredible team at UBS that focuses on wealth with purpose. And we do this by connecting and partnering with our clients, our colleagues, and the community to create a better world. And for us, that means a more equitable world that enables all to thrive. And the focus of our community impact work is about advancing inclusive economic growth and opportunity. We do this by deploying catalytic capital, by investing in the people and organizations that are proximate to solutions, and by unleashing the power of our 26,000 colleagues across the US. And like many of you, we've been engaged in this work for a number of years, and we tend to focus on program models and impact outcomes measurement, and all of these things that are really important to the fidelity of the work that I know that we all want to do. But what's become more clear to us more than ever is this fundamental role that cultural norms and perceptions and narrative play in ensuring that the work that we're trying to contribute to is successful and is sustained. It is the stories that we tell about ourselves, and it's the stories that we tell about others, about who's worth investing in and who matters. And this is the understanding that I think undergirds all of our collective efforts in this room. A life-changing experience I've had in the past year was to be able to see a masterpiece of a film called Origin, Ava DuVernay's film based on the best-selling book Caste. And if you haven't seen it, I encourage it. And if you know me, you know that I've been talking about this for the past year. But I share this because it gave me and a lot of our clients and colleagues a new frame and language to use, trying to understand our divisions and also our shared humanity. Similarly, with Nikole Hannah-Jones's groundbreaking The 1619 Project really demonstrated this power of narrative change, reframing our own country's origin story. And so my conclusion is that sometimes art can change the conversation and sometimes it can change everything. Narrative change work, expanding who gets to tell the stories and how this work can be invested in, is the topic our next panel will discuss. And so with that, I'm really honored to welcome to the Social Innovation Summit stage Natalie Moore, esteemed journalist of WBZ Chicago, Nikole Hannah-Jones, Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist and curator of the 1619 Project, and Regina Miller, the executive director of Array Alliance and one of the producers of Origin. Thank you.
Thank you for those introductions. Thank you all for being here. We don't have a lot of time, but we're going to pack as much in as we can in these less than 15 minutes. So Regina, as Executive Director of Array Alliance, I want to talk to you about the film Origin, which is so beautifully done. I loved it. And what I loved about it is that it took the narrative of Isabel Wilkerson and made her the through line. And that was a choice. Can you talk about wanting to do that in the film, it wasn't just about her thesis of caste, but it's her journey getting to that thesis.
Absolutely, and just want to thank Jamie, who has sold more tickets for Origin than anyone else. We love her. She's been an extraordinary advocate, and Armand, who works with her. Ava DuVernay is a visionary and the founder of Array, which is a media collective in Los Angeles. And I think if I can share a little bit about Array, it'll give context as to why Ava saw this as an entry point for the story. So Array is 4 pillars. First pillar is Array Filmworks. That's our creative pillar, where we think of 13th, Selma, When They See Us, Cullen in Black and White. That's where Ava does all of the creation work of her content. The second pillar is called array releasing. That's where we release films created by women of all kinds and artists of color that are completed, and we put robust marketing campaigns around them, put them out into the world in theaters, and then we have a strategic partnership with Netflix. They land on Netflix so the global world can see these films. The third pillar is Array Creative Campus, which is what Ava lovingly refers to as her liberated space. She actually took her Wrinkle in Time $9 million directorial fee and purchased that land because she felt that she needed to own the space and create a new studio. What would it look like if a Black woman owned a studio in Los Angeles and had a really welcoming environment for all creatives to come and work together? There's edit bays, writers' rooms, state-of-the-art theater, convening spaces, and that's her creative campus. And the fourth pillar is the one that I run. I met Ava 7 years ago when she was thinking about starting a nonprofit, and that's where we do all of the incubation around cinema as a social justice tool and finding new points of entry to tell these stories and really put new narratives out there. That's where we also create our learning guides, and I know we have a little bit of time, but it's just an extraordinary incubator of disruptive ideas. And so with Origin, Ava felt that she had to do this movie now before the next election. And for her, there was an urgency to get these stories out there. And she thought it would be amazing to be able to finally put all four of her pillars to work collectively together to tell the story in a new way. And for her, the human entry was through two pillars, grief and love, and having Isabel as that main character humanized and helped us frame this in a different way.
Can you also talk about the funding model? Because what you're talking about is disrupting how Hollywood makes films, distributes films, but you got to raise money.
Yes, and that's what I love to do. I love fundraising. And so it was June 19th. I remember it like it was yesterday, 2022. Ava was on a panel in Montgomery, Alabama, and she called me. And she's like, Reg, I have an idea. It's always a good sign when Ava calls you that she has an idea. She said, you know those gorgeous shows on PBS where afterwards you see brought to you by the Ford Foundation or brought to you by MacArthur Foundation? What if we went to our philanthropic partners and asked them, would they consider funding a large narrative film fully funded through philanthropy? And it's June. I would need the money in by September, because that's when I have planned, I have everything set for pre-production, the urgency behind the story. And I was like, how much money are you talking about? And she's like, well, I can do it for $30 million, but I really need 38. And I was like, well, we'll get you what you want. Let me think about this. My favorite word is yes. And so with that, I was like, you know what, Darren Walker, who's an extraordinary human being, he's the head of the Ford Foundation, he's been our mentor along the way. I said, Ava, call Darren and ask him. And if he says yes, he's a signal funder. Darren says yes, I could build a cohort around that. So she called him, he's like, Darren, I have an idea. And he said, I love it. He said, it's brave, it's bold, Ava, only you need to do this. And then from that, yes, we built this cohort of funders, and we decided to activate every aspect of capital by stacking the capital and using social investing, program-related investments, philanthropic grants, debt financing, grassroots campaigns, corporate, put it all together into this waterfall that was very advantageous if you were a social impact investor. And thus the model was created, and we were set forth in this new way.
Nikole, 1619 is also an origin story.
Yes.
The origin of this country. And you are on paperback tour now. Can you just reflect on these past couple of years, what it's been like to have your work out there in the public?
Okay. This is a 2-hour lecture, but I'm going to give it to y'all. I'm going to give it to y'all in about 5 minutes. So when I think about what the project was trying to do, it really epitomizes why I became a journalist, which is understanding, from a young age when I would read the daily newspaper with my dad and understood that what we were seeing in the paper was actually not reflective of what I saw in my own community. And that really what it was a reflection of was power, and what people who held power decided would be the narrative of our town, and particularly of our Black community. I realized how much power we also hold as journalists in shaping what will the narrative of our society be. So that's what 1619 tries to do, is to offer a counter narrative to the accepted narrative of who we are, to really try to dismantle the myths about America that I think allow us to accept all of the grave inequalities that we experience every day. And so reflecting on the last 5 years, I think I can say I have at least accomplished that goal a little bit.
A little bit.
I really wanted to force the year 1619 into the national lexicon, to say we all know 1776, and when we hear that date, it immediately evokes the image of the United States, right? Of these intrepid colonists who want to found a country based on individual liberties and freedom, and that makes you think about America in a very particular way. And I wanted to put 1619 on par with that date, and to say, if you really want to understand our nation, you have to think about our founding, not in 1776 with ideas of liberty, but in 1619 with the practice of slavery. And that both of these things are really shaping the country that we're in, and that our country remains in tension because of both of these things, right? I mean, this is what origin is about. So it's been crazy in the last 5 years. You know this. You've been a daily journalist just like I was for most of my career. And you hope that you can create a work of journalism that people will pay attention to for like 2 days. The fact that like 5 years later, I've literally worked on nothing but 1619, that it has been something that people have really wanted to embrace, speaks both to the power of narrative and what narrative can do, but also to the power of people really wanting to grapple more honestly with our history, and wanting, realizing we've all been taught a collective lie. We've been taught the story of America that does not actually explain the society we live in. And I have been heartened by how many of my fellow Americans have wanted to grapple more truthfully.
So 5 years ago, we were all rushing out to get a hard copy of the New York Times that Sunday when it was selling out. So 1619 started as a magazine project, a book, a children's book, paperback, a Hulu series. So you have podcast, yes. Did I miss another platform? And so you've tried to meet people where they are on how they consume media, consume content. Which has been the most rewarding for you?
I don't know that I would say any one medium has been more rewarding. As a journalist, each one has been interesting to me. It's been a way to tell the story in a different way, to reach different audiences. I mean, I'm a print journalist, so I always love print. I feel like it's, you can sit with the words, you can, there's just something about that book in your hands, and imagining that book on shelves, hopefully long after I'm gone. But then I, of course, think about like my family back home, who's very working class. And it's not that they don't read, but frankly, most people are not reading 10,000 word essays, no matter who they are. So the documentary was the way that the folks that I come from who want this information were best able to receive that information. But I think, I want to quickly, I'm going to go rogue just a little bit, which I sometimes do. But because of the title of this talk, funding was a big part. Of course, I produced the 1619 project for the New York Times, but we still had to fund so much of what we wanted to do. We were determined when we published the original magazine that we know who the typical New York Times subscriber is. They're not folks in my neighborhood, right? They're not folks in my hometown. And we didn't want to produce this work about descendants of slavery, and yet descendants of slavery didn't really have access to it. So I fundraised, which journalists don't typically do and really aren't supposed to do, so keep that off the record, just like. Right, I fundraise from philanthropy. I fundraised, we couldn't sell ads in the original magazine because all of the usual people who advertise in the New York Times Magazine were scared to advertise because of what the content was. Got to the point where my boss was like, if we don't sell these ads, we'll just give them away to HBCUs. And so I was out there raising money. We were able, individual people like John Legend donated tens of thousands of dollars. A former basketball player, Wilson Chandler, donated something like $35,000. And then we also had like Fund 2. And we put all this money together so we could print all of these additional copies that we gave for free to high schools in cities with lots of black folks, to HBCUs, to churches, to libraries. And I think that was such a big part of what we were trying to do, is also to make it accessible. And we had to require on outside funding because, the New York Times is a for-profit venture, right? They're not giving away the product, but we found a way to do so.
Did any of those advertisers regret not being attached to it?
I would imagine almost all of them did, right? I mean, as you know, that magazine sold out 3 times. That if you go on eBay now, you have to pay $500 to get a copy of that magazine. That the New York Times had not sold more copies of a single issue outside of the 1619 Project, except for when Obama won the historic, first time he won the presidency. So I think what the work that we do shows is our stories have not been valued. That a lot of times people think that Americans aren't ready for the truth, that they don't want to deal with difficult subjects. But if there's investment in telling those stories the right way, people will come to them. So, I'm a slightly petty person. I do indulge my pettiness. So nothing felt better than to see all of these magazines selling out again and again, and knowing that we could not get advertisers, but we didn't have that problem, after that.
Did you have to do any funding beyond that for the other platforms? How did that work?
No, that's my point.
Yeah.
Right? No, after the project came out, then people were coming to us, and Lionsgate came to us, and we signed a big development deal with them. Penguin Random House signed a 7-deal book deal with us. So again, it was just telling the story truthfully, telling it honestly, and having. You have to have the proper financial support to tell the stories the way that they need to be told. And I got that from the Times. I mean, this was, I always say, the blackest shit the New York Times ever did. And a lot of people always presume I had to fight really hard to get that financial support within the institution. I didn't. But we did have to fight to get people outside of the institution to believe that this was work that wouldn't tarnish their brand, that it was work that was worthy, that it was work that people would actually want to engage with.
Regina, quickly before we have to move on, I want to know, did you all have different metrics of success by going the philanthropic route?
Absolutely. I mean, studios measure success through box office, and we measure success through the life of the film. Has it changed people's hearts and minds? Did it educate someone? Did it bring a connection? Did it build more empathy? Did it create a new way of thinking? Ava used to say she didn't want engagement, she didn't want agreement in the film. She wanted engagement. And I think there's been a lot, I was listening to another panel about discourse, that we need to be able to have healthy discourse and have these arguments around the kitchen table. And the movie allows you to go there, and she does it in such a genius way, using all these different styles that you're not quite sure, is it documentary, is it real, is he an actor, is he a real person? So I feel like our metrics are still happening. June 10th, help us make the metric on Hulu go up. That's when it goes on streaming, and you'll get to see it. And we're also launching our free digital learning guide. I know you did a gorgeous curriculum around your work too. And that's for learners of all ages, middle school, high school, universities. And it's like a full course curriculum, and you can enter it from anywhere that you're comfortable with. So we measure culture change. Yeah. And is now like 1619. That's the thing that we talk about. We didn't talk about it before. You did your gorgeous work. So we hope people start using the word cast and changing the way they use their language and how they engage with people. So our metrics are very layered, and they're about changing policies, changing laws, using the tool of storytelling to do that. So.
Right. Well, we went over time anyway, and
We did.
so we have to end the conversation now. But thank you, Nikole. Thank you, Regina.
Thank you.
Thank you.